But we thank you very much for doing it, and always standing up in principle and fighting for the rights of the majority of society. So thank you very much, Jeremy. Our next speaker is Matt Stanley, who's on the NUS National Executive, and he's also the co-founder of the Bring Back EMA campaign, and he's president of Mid-Kent College Students' Union. Matt.
Thanks. So, as Aaron said, my name's Matt. I'm from the National Union of Students National Executive Council and also President of Mid-Kent College Students' Union. So throughout today we've discussed the enormous attacks that we're facing as students and also the enormous attacks on wider society as well. Attacks which constitute the biggest assault on the living standards of ordinary people in Britain for generations. We've discussed how in 2010 the government made some of their first and most vicious attacks on students, from the trebling of tuition fees and scrapping of both the adult learning grant and education maintenance allowance. EMA was a weekly grant that went to over 500,000 of the poorest students studying in further education, allowing them to support themselves by essential resources for study, helping with travel costs, and actually allowing students to feel some level of financial independence. And absolutely nothing highlighted the Tory-led government's class interests more than the scrapping of this vital grant. Scrapping EMA was a vicious attack on the aspirations of some of the poorest students in the country. This year, the government also introduced their 24+ advanced learner loan system to colleges. Perversely, it's being touted by the government as an additional support for adults who study at college. In reality, these loans are a thin veil to shift the entire cost of education onto students, with all adults studying at college now required to pay 100% of their course cost, covered by a loan of £4,000. And this represents nothing more than the marketisation of further education, and thousands of mature students, particularly women and black students, are being saddled with thousands of pounds worth of debt. And amazingly, the government has even included higher and advanced apprentices in this scheme, which means that any apprentice who's over the age of 24 will receive a wage of only £2.68 per hour, but will have to take out a loan of thousands of pounds to cover the cost of their course, essentially paying to work. And the harsh impact of cuts is felt severely in my community, where almost 25% of children live in poverty. And friends, we know that the attacks that we've endured so far are just the beginning, and that we have many, many battles ahead of us. The Tories and the Lib Dems are united in their attacks on students. We must be united, and we must fight them head on. Today, we've made an important start. This is one of the biggest anti-austerity gatherings of students since the explosive student marches of 2010 and 11, and we must use this opportunity to re-energise the student movement and step up our fight against austerity. It's great to see that the Student Assembly Against Austerity has brought together a broad and wide range of groups and campaigns today, from Labour to the Greens, trade unions, the National Campaign Against Fees and Cuts, the Bring Back EMA campaign, NUS Liberation campaigns, and many progressive student groups. So where next for the student movement in our battle against austerity? I think the first thing to say is that protesting and campaigning does work. After a decade of building an anti-war movement, the British Prime Minister's plans to launch a war in Syria were defeated by a margin of 13 votes. But we should take huge inspiration from that victory. And the conclusion to draw from this is simple. We've got to build a fighting national movement against austerity. Number two, we've got to stay united. One of the greatest weapons that the elites have is their power to divide us. They want to pit young against old, immigrant against non-immigrant, black people against white people. They want to demonise benefit claimants, single mums and Muslims. And there is only one way to fight the Tories' divide and rule tactics. When they say division, we say unity. And when they say scapegoat, we say solidarity. And when they say immigrants are to blame for the economic crisis, we point them in the direction of the City of London and tell them we blame bankers and not the burqa. This mantra that there's no alternative. They say we can't afford to fund education and public services and that they're better run in private hands. Better run for who? All that privatisation of energy companies has led to is soaring bills and soaring profits for big business and a chronic lack of investment in the green energy that we need to stop the planet from burning. All that the privatisation of the train lines has led to is rising rail fares, huge profits for private companies and a worse service. And if the government gets away with privatising student loans, it'll lead to a retrospective hike in tuition fees for all graduates. We'll be paying more every month for years longer just to line the pockets of big business with more profits. Of course, there is an alternative to privatised neoliberal education. It's free, publicly funded education. Can we afford it? It pays for itself. State spending on education leads to growth and jobs. When they say there's no alternative, we know that free education isn't just possible, it's necessary. From today, we need to move forward together. Let's start a student assembly against austerity on every single campus, to create forums where different groups and campaigning organisations come together to discuss all our fights and unite all of our struggles. Let's fight together to stop the sell-off of student loans. Let's campaign together to bring back EMA. And together, let's give the Tories a 5th of November that they'll never forget. We need action on every campus across the country, from banner drops to occupations. The People's Assembly Against Austerity was the biggest united gathering of the anti-cuts movement since the Tory-led government came to power 3 years ago. The Student Assembly Against Austerity offers us the chance to unite and take forward our struggles. The government have set out their agenda, and today the student movement has proved that we're united and ready to fight them head on.
Thank you very much, Matt, and it's always a pleasure to fight with you on the NUS NEC for all of